G'day, welcome to Catalyst. With blue blood, 3 hearts, a parrot-like beak, and the ability to change colour in a flash, the cuttlefish would have to be one of the world's most extraordinary creatures. Well, Mark Horstman takes a dive in the only place where 250,000 giant Australian cuttlefish go to breed each year. But as Mark finds out, this nursery could soon be under mortal threat.
At first glance, this rocky coastline in South Australia doesn't look all that special. Fringed by gas refineries, lead smelters and steelworks, it's more industrial landscape than pristine wilderness. Perched at the top of the Spencer Gulf, even its name, Point Lowly, doesn't hold much promise. But in the eyes of the giant Australian cuttlefish, there is nowhere else on the planet to be. And not just for crowds of cuttlefish, for scientists as well. To an expert in cephalopod behaviour, like Roger Hanlon, Point Lowly is the centre of the cuttlefish universe.
This place is unique because I've been searching many study sites around the world for almost 30 years. I've never found a spawning aggregation of cuttlefish and never dreamed there'd be something of this magnitude.
Adelaide University's Bronwyn Galanders is rapt that it's right on her doorstep.
It's globally unique. You don't get aggregations of cuttlefish breeding like this anywhere else in the world.
For years, I've heard about this annual frenzy when hundreds of thousands of cuttlefish migrate to Point Lowly. And now I'm going to see it for myself.
The giant Australian cuttlefish is the largest cuttlefish in the world. The males can grow up to 1 metre in length. And this is where they come to every winter, every year, the Upper Spencer Gulf in South Australia. And they've got just one thing on their minds: sex.
Elsewhere, I'd be lucky to see one cuttlefish every 100 square metres. Here, it's one every metre. These cuttlefish are here to breed before they die. The males are so determined to attract the attention of the females, they don't seem to mind my voyeurism.
You'll suddenly notice a little female in under the males. It's almost like they're engulfing them with their tentacles. You've got to remember that there's about 8 times the number of males to females, and so there really is competition for that lone female.
Cuttlefish are jet-propelled ambush predators. 2 tentacles capture their prey, and 8 arms don't let go. Their eyes are among the most highly developed of any animal.
They're just such charismatic organisms, and you only need to get in the water a few times to see them and fall in love with them.
Bronwyn carefully collects some of the eggs the cuttlefish lay underneath the flat rocks.
They're only here from around mid-late May through to end of August, early September, the adults that is, and then the eggs hatch out. And we're not really too sure about where the hatchlings go.
Roger is studying how these shapeshifters use colour and patterns to communicate.
The speed of change and the diversity of patterns in this animal is unparalleled on planet Earth, land or sea. So it's really quite an extraordinary thing. We say they have electric skin or smart skin because they can implement all of their behavior through their skin patterns.
That is awesome. There are thousands of them around this area, just beneath my feet. It's got to be one of the wonders of the natural world. But what's really incredible here is that they need just the right conditions, just the right kind of rocks, just the right kind of salinity, just the right kind of chilly temperature to make the breeding work. And that's crucial to keep that the way it is.
Especially when the cuttlefish habitat is limited to a narrow fringe along the shore, only to a depth of less than 10 metres. Physical oceanographer Jochen Kempf is fascinated how evaporation makes the Gulf saltier than the ocean.
Spencer Gulf is one of the few inverse estuaries that exist on Earth.
An inverse estuary.
It's an inverse estuary. These are systems where the salinity is greater compared to the ambient ocean. And this region is so special, the upper region of Spencer Gulf, because of the length of the Gulf. The water here is not flushed every year on a seasonal basis. This one is
Naturally high salinity is one thing, but too much salt for too long is poison.
We know from the experiments that we've done with the eggs that they're extremely sensitive to salinity. It only needs to increase slightly and we start seeing reduced survival and reduced growth.
Bronwyn stitches the eggs onto floating platforms to recreate Point Lowly in the lab. Her team rears the eggs for the 3 to 5 months it takes for the embryos to develop.
We've set up tanks that are at different concentrations of brine, and we know that they pretty much all hatch out at the normal salinity and the environment that they're found at, and pretty much after 40 parts per thousand or grams per litre, we see a decrease in hatching success and total mortality at 50 grams per litre.
So any change that increases salinity in the breeding area spells trouble in cuttlefish paradise. And there are plenty of changes planned for an industrial area like Point Lowly.
Over there is a gas refinery. Proposed for right next to it, straight through the cuttlefish habitat, is an ore-loading jetty. But there's another development on top of that that's got scientists really worried.
It starts here, in the Red Desert, more than 300 kilometres inland, at the vast underground mine and smelter known as Olympic Dam. BHP Billiton plans to turn Olympic Dam into the world's largest open-cut mine and produce 6 times more copper, gold, silver and uranium ore. That requires an additional 200 million litres of fresh water every day, which would be piped from a desalination plant built at Point Lowly. Around the clock, for several decades, all the waste salt removed from the seawater would be pumped into deeper water a few hundred metres from the cuttlefish habitat.
If the desalination plant goes ahead, what will be below us?
This is the location of the outlet, of the desal outlet, where they're going to pump toxic brine into the sea.
How deep down will that be?
It's about 20 meters deep here, and we are 500 meters from the shore.
BHP Billiton has to be certain that the pipe won't pump extra salt into the cuttlefish habitat. The survival of their eggs decreases by 7% for every 1% increase in salinity.
Outside this green line, there is no measurable impact to marine life.
With a desalination plant that's essentially putting out water that's up to 75 grams per litre, if that doesn't dissipate back to background levels fairly quickly and it starts encroaching on the cuttlefish habitat, then there is potential to impact them. With cuttlefish, they won't be around to come back and breed again because they pretty much breed and then die. So if those eggs and hatchlings don't survive, then we've essentially lost a really unique global phenomena.
While governments consider the proposal to expand Olympic Dam, this is what they're reading. BHP's environmental impact statement, all 17 kilos and 5,000 pages of it. Although the company confidently states that brine at damaging concentrations would never overlap the cuttlefish habitat, BHP Billiton declined my invitation to be interviewed on camera. Instead, they sent me this by email.
Gravitational effects ensure that the denser return water is unable to flow uphill to the level of the breeding habitat 600 metres away.
But Jochen believes gravity and distance can't always be relied on to protect the cuttlefish.
There's another feature of the Gulfs which is called the Dodge tide. Yeah, the Dodge tide is essentially a tidal flow which vanishes every 14 days, so very slow currents.
The Dodge tide is the local term for this regular event when tidal currents neutralise each other. Jochen's modelling shows this could lead to upwelling of brine from the bottom.
To produce this upwelling, you need strong offshore winds, and most severe impacts occur during a Dodge tide. So if you have these two conditions, slack tide, strong offshore winds, it leads to upwelling of toxic brine into the shallow habitat.
What Jochen calls toxic brine, seen here in red, is twice as salty as seawater, carries concentrated trace elements like chromium, and may contain little oxygen.
Under this model, you could be getting toxic invasions of the cuttlefish habitat how many times a month?
Or 3 to 5 days a month. But the critical point is that this is a demonstration that this process can happen, which is in stark contrast to BHP Billiton's claims that these zones can never overlap.
From the point of view of the cuttlefish, they may have nowhere else to go. Bronwyn's genetic research shows that the giant Australian cuttlefish at Point Lowly is a species in its own right.
If we get this wrong, we could potentially lose an iconic species. We really have to get this right first time round because we're not going to get a second chance.
With what you've learned about what the cuttlefish population here needs to survive, how would you advise the people making a decision about BHP's proposal?
I'd put the desalination plant somewhere else, outside Spencer Gulf.